In today's Mr. Ballen video, we're finding out that Brazil have been a little bit shifty, a little bit shady, because the title of his video is Brazil tried to cover up this UFO encounter. Now, he must have been going back some years for it to be called UFO, because now it's been changed, hasn't it, from UFO to UAP. I mean, which sad little man sat there and went, do you know what? We need to change the name of UFO. It is not, it's correct with today's standards. It is not falling in with everyone else's culture. We need to call it unidentified anomaly piss off. Do you know what I mean? Just leave it as UFO. Why do the name need to be changed? It's one of them stupid little things that government types think need changing. Anyway, if this is the first time being here or seeing any of my reactions, then please hit like and subscribe. It supports me and it supports the channel, and I do appreciate it very, very much. And let's see what Mr. Ballen does to the like button. Although it can't be as bad as change the name to UFO to UAP. Let's go.
Today, I'm going to share 3 really unbelievable stories.
As usual.
Including a story that's about this very dark ritual that's practiced in Somalia. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So, if that's of interest to you, the next time you're at the like button's house, go ahead and replace all their hand lotion with room temperature mayonnaise. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
All right, let's go, Mr. Ballen.
Let's get into today's stories.
Let's do it. A bad catch. Let's go.
One night in the fall of 1966, a 30-year-old man...
when England won the World Cup. Hey.
One night in the fall of 1966, a 30-year-old man named Sam and his 3 friends snuck along the banks of the Eel River estuary near Eureka, California.
Okay.
And when they found a good spot to fish from, they put down all their fishing gear and opened up their tackle boxes.
And had a eureka moment. Right, that's the last dad joke he came off me.
All 4 of them pulled out these special glow-in-the-dark lures, and they tried to stay as quiet as possible as they attached these lures to their fishing rods, and then slowly waded out into the water. So Sam and his friends had to be really quiet and very careful as they did this, because what they were about to do was actually illegal. Now, they were going there to fish for salmon, which that in and of itself was not illegal.
Okay.
But doing it at night here was.
Why?
And that was because the salmon at night would all gather together in this deep, slow-moving spot in the river to sleep. And so they were like extremely easy prey. You could practically just walk out and like, hit them over the head, and there you go, you got a salmon.
So basically, they don't want them overfished then, do they? That's why you can't do it at night, when pretty much everyone's going to go at night, aren't they? You know what I mean?
Prey. You could practically just walk out and like hit them over the head, and there you go, you got a salmon. And so on the one hand, it was sort of unethical. It's not really fishing anymore.
No,
it's
just
like smashing a fish in a barrel, basically. But more than that, it was very easy to overfish the salmon in this river if there wasn't rules protecting them at night. Additionally, those glow-in-the-dark lures that Sam and his buddies were using were also illegal because the salmon were really attracted to the lures, which again just contributed to even more overfishing.
Okay.
And also keep in mind, a glow-in-the-dark lure could only really be used at night. And so again, it's sort of like you can't fish at night and you definitely can't use these lures. That's
well, to be honest, you could use a glow-in-the-dark lure in the daytime. Not that it'd do much good, but you can still use it as a lure, couldn't you? You can put a worm on the end of it and throw it in the water. You still catch a fish. It's just that at night time you're going to be more attractive because they can see it. That's all. You still use it in the day, though, Mr. Ballen.
Like a big no-no. But while Sam and his buddies were definitely aware of these rules in place that protected the fish, the reality was they didn't really care. I mean, they were here about to go fishing, so obviously they didn't care.
No.
And the reason for that is they made a lot of money by catching a lot of these fish at night and then selling them illegally. And so for weeks now, they had been sneaking into this part of the estuary every night to fish. And in fact, just to ensure they were successful, they had even begun bringing out lookouts with them who were hiding along the road that led to the estuary to tell Sam if any fish and wildlife officers were out on patrol, in which case they would obviously stop and flee. And so now, Sam and his friends cast their lures into the river, and within a few seconds, Sam had a bite. I mean, unsurprisingly, the salmon are literally right there sleeping, ripe for the picking. And it took all his strength to reel in this catch because The salmon in this estuary were huge. Some could weigh up to 100 pounds.
Wow.
But eventually, Sam was able to wrestle the fish back up onto the riverbank, and then as soon as he had this monster up on shore, he cast his line again. About an hour later, Sam and his friends had caught so many fish that Sam wasn't even sure how they would carry all of them back to the truck. So he decided it was probably about time to call it a night. So, just for good measure, he cast his lure one more time into the water, and like always, he got a bite right away. But this time, when he began reeling it in, there was way more drag on his lure than he had ever felt before.
Okay.
Even with some of the biggest fish he had ever caught. I mean, this was like a monster. And so Sam, I mean, he could barely turn his reel. Like, he could barely get this thing to move in the water. And he's thinking, I have caught, for sure, the biggest salmon I've ever caught in my life. Like, this is incredible. And so he calls out to his buddies to, like, get a net ready. Like, come over here. Get ready to catch this thing. It's
in California. Could it be an alligator? Are they on the other side with Florida and stuff? This is my prediction. I think he's caught a gator.
huge. And his buddies are all excited. They got their nets ready, and he's reeling, and they can hear the sound of the water splashing. They can barely see. It's dark, but they know the fish is fighting like mad, and he's pulling, and finally, he gives one more heave, and he gets this fish up and out of the water.
Oh, it's a fish then.
And all his buddies, they're all looking to see what he caught, and when they see what it was, Sam, after freezing, like in terror for a second, he turns to his friends and just screams, "Run!"
It's gotta be a gator.
It would turn out, Sam had not caught a gigantic salmon. In fact, he hadn't even caught a fish at all. What he really caught was a game warden with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Warden Terry Grosh, he knew that poachers were illegally fishing salmon at night along the estuary. And these poachers had lookouts hiding all over the place. And so none of the wardens had been able to catch these poachers before they were able to escape. So Warden Terry Grosh decided that he would need to take a more creative approach if he was going to catch these poachers. And so what he did on the night of Sam's big catch is he put on a full body wetsuit and slid into the water with the salmon before the poachers arrived. So he's like hanging out in the water in the darkness. Nobody can see him with the sleeping salmon. And what he was doing is waiting for the perfect moment to jump out and catch the poachers. But what ended up happening is the poachers actually caught Terry. But after Sam had reeled the warden out of the water, you know, even though he yelled for his buddies to run, Terry Grosh just pulled down his hood and he's like, yeah, you're all under arrest. Once word got around that Terry had literally been in the water with the salmon to protect them, very quickly, poaching stopped at the Eel River estuary, at least for quite a while. And in fact, the stunt...
That's effective. That, you know, it's like, man, do you know, imagine if they'd just gone when they said, instead of casting the last lure for the guy, to catch the guy. Imagine if they'd just gone, they might have got away with that. But now that everyone's got the words got round that there's a guy in the water who's like supervising the fish, you know, that's genius. All I can see in my head is like Basildon Bond off Ross Abbott.
Stopped at the Eel River estuary, at least for quite a while. And in fact, the stunt by Terry was so successful that it inspired a few other game wardens along the west coast of the United States to also get in the water and catch illegal fishermen that way.
Hey, if it works, that was brilliant. Kudos to Terry. Kudos to Terry there. Next one, the healer. Right, let's go. There's me thinking it's going to be an alligator.
On a swelteringly hot day in 2009, a woman named Fatima walked down a dirt road toward a windowless shack on the outskirts of Mogadishu, Somalia. She was holding the hand of her 17-year-old son, Abdi.
Right.
And as they got closer to the shack, she kept squeezing his hand tighter and tighter because Fatima was afraid. And what she really wanted to do was just turn around and run back home.
Afraid of what?
But she knew she had to keep going because what was waiting for them inside of that shack was really her only chance to save her son's life. So Fatima and her son, they continue walking down the road, and they eventually reach the shack, and they go around to the front of it, and there's this metal door that was blocking the entrance. And Fatima, you know, took a deep breath to steady herself, and then she knocked. And And a few seconds later, a man opened the door. The man quickly greeted Fatima, but then with a very grim expression, he looked at Abdi, her son, and he pointed at him, and he said, "Are you ready?" But Abdi didn't answer. In fact, Abdi didn't even appear to be paying any attention to this man, or really paying attention to anything. He was just sort of lost in his own thoughts, looking all around.
Okay.
So Abdi had been a pretty typical child, but over the past few years, he'd begun acting really, really strange. It began with nightmares and panic attacks that sort of came out of nowhere. And then he also started freaking out like every time there was a loud or sudden noise. And then most recently, he'd begun getting into these strange mental states where he was so agitated and also confused and disoriented that he would sort of lash out at anybody near him, or even sometimes he would try to hurt himself.
Sounds a bit like schizophrenia, this. It's like multiple personality syndrome or something. Because, like, what he's doing there is talking split personality, isn't he?
That he would sort of lash out at anybody near him, or even sometimes he would try to hurt himself. When Abdi would act like this, sometimes he would get so violent that his mother, Fatima, had to literally tie him up for his own safety.
Jesus Christ.
But
like
remember, Abdi, I mean, he's 17 years old. He's almost a man, at least physically. And it was becoming harder and harder for Fatima to literally restrain him. And she was just getting really scared, not just for her own safety, but for her son's safety, for everyone's safety. Now, Fatima had taken her son to every hospital in Mogadishu, but the infrastructure in Somalia had been devastated by 2 decades of civil war. And so these hospitals are really nothing like the hospitals you would see in the West. These are underfunded. The training is not great for the medical staff. Like, this is not a great place to go if you have a serious medical emergency. And so they were not able to help her with her son. And for Fatima, I mean, in her life, she had seen other people with symptoms that sort of mirrored what she was seeing with her son. And she knew from having seen these people that if they didn't get cured, unfortunately, the outcomes were very, very bad. I mean, most of these people she had seen had wound up being chained to their beds, in locked rooms 24/7, or in some cases, these folks were chained to trees and left to die by their family who couldn't take care of them anymore.
Do you know where it's pointing towards this to me? Rabies. Something that rabies turns you into a weird person and starts making you crazy, doesn't it? Like what happens in dogs. And I know it was quite, I don't know, like I say, I don't know how bad it was in Africa, but there was a lot of epidemics like Ebola, rabies and stuff like that, you know what I mean? AIDS and what have you. And it turns out that like a lot of people died from these things, didn't they? I don't actually, with rabies, I think there's still no cure for rabies, is there? So if you get it, you're going to die anyway, aren't you?
And Fatima, I mean, she didn't want that to happen to her son, and so she was willing to do virtually anything to save him. And so with that in mind, Fatima had been saving up money for literally years to try this final treatment, which was inside of this shack that she and her son had just arrived outside of. This treatment was extremely expensive, but she believed it was her only hope. And so this man in the hut, he sort of steps aside and gestures for the mother and son to come inside. And Fatima, who is very nervous, she leads Abdi, who's sort of, lost in space, inside of the hut. And then once inside, the man began sort of examining Abdi. And so while he was doing that, Fatima just sort of stepped aside and just sort of glanced around the interior of the shack.
Yeah.
And she was sort of struck by how bare it was. I mean, there was literally nothing else in the shack other than this single plastic chair right in the middle of the dirt floor.
Poverty countries, man.
But, Fatima knew this is all part of the process. And so after a few minutes, the man finished examining Abdi, and he turned to Fatima and he said, your boy is in good physical condition, so now they're ready to begin. But the man said to Fatima that, he would not be the one to actually perform the treatment on Abdi. The treatment that was going to be done on Abdi had to be done by a very specific kind of healer. This healer would have to stay in this shack with Abdi overnight, maybe even for multiple nights, until they managed to remove this thing that was causing all of his problems. And so Fatima, she just nodded. And
remove this thing? Is it going to be like a tick, do you think? Or it's like a botfly worm or something? Just guessworking because it's a Mr. Ballen video, isn't it?
this thing that was causing all of his problems. And so Fatima, she just nodded and she pulled out an envelope full of cash and she handed it to the man. And then she turned to her son and she gave him a big hug and told him she would come back when the treatment was over.
Okay.
Then Fatima, as quick as she could, she just turned and left. And the man went to go and get the healer. 2 days later, Fatima walked back down that same dirt road toward the metal shack. And this time, she was hopeful. I mean, she was expecting to see her son standing outside, waiting for her, grinning like he used to before, he got sick and everything changed. But instead, as she approached the shack, all she saw was that same man who was sitting in a chair outside of the shack. And when he looked up and saw Fatima, he just looked down and shook his head. Fatima immediately ran forward and began screaming like, "Where's my son? What happened?"
Damn.
And the man tried to restrain her as she reached the door of the shack, but she pushed past him and she opened up the door, and there on the floor of the shack was Abdi. And his body had clearly been slashed and torn all apart. But then before Fatima could even process this just horrific scene in front of her, she heard this high-pitched laughter coming from somewhere behind her. And she turned around, and standing inside the shack in the shadows was the healer who had done this to her son.
What? Healers don't cause damage. He's been slashed to pieces. He's supposed to heal, not maim. I think they got the word mixed up when they said healer.
Shack in the shadows was the healer who had done this to her son. It would turn out, after Fatima had tried desperately to get real medical help for her son, but it had not been successful, after that, she was so desperate, she turned to a very dangerous kind of folk treatment. There's an old belief in some parts of Somalia that mental illness is actually caused by possession, by an evil spirit known as a jinn.
A jinn,
This belief says that there's only one kind of healer that can see the jinn and force it out of the person. But that healer with the special ability to do that was not a person. The healer was a wild hyena. And the treatment consists of putting the afflicted individual in a closed, small room with said hyena for hours or even days on end. Now, there are no real statistics on just how often this treatment is done in Somalia, but it's happened enough that there's been numerous stories of patients who have been subjected to it getting injured or being killed, just like Abdi.
Hyenas have one of the strongest bites in the animal kingdom. And backed into a corner in a room with a person, it's gonna attack. Who sat there and thought, hey, I tell you what, these hyenas, if we lock a guy in a room with it who's got these devilments inside him or these jinns, maybe the hyena can slash the body open and the jinn can escape and get away and leave the body. What sort of messed up mentality is this? This is I put it to the people of Somalia that the whole process, the whole people who come up with this, they're the fucking crazy ones. Maybe he just had mental health. You know what I mean? Now he's not even got health.
And since 2013, there's even been a big campaign led by a Somali nurse to try to end this sort of barbaric practice. And also to expand access to mental health care across Somalia.
That's mad. Wow. Stick him in with a lion, man. At least it'd be quicker. The burn
One
marks.
morning in September of 19...
I'm still can't get over that hyena story. Right, okay, focus.
One morning in September of 1977, a 24-year-old doctor named Falaji Carvalho hurried into the examination room at our hospital in a remote fishing village in northern Brazil.
Right.
The town was called Colares, and it was so small that Dr. Carvalho was actually the only doctor at the hospital, which had made her really good at treating all kinds of emergency medical issues because she had to treat basically everything. But despite all that, when Dr. Carvalho walked into the exam room and saw her new patient, who was this middle-aged woman lying out on this exam table on her back, when she saw what was clearly afflicting this woman, she had never seen it before. Like, this was something new. It was very curious. The woman had this very large burn on her chest, and the woman clearly was very panicked about this big burn, and she was begging Dr. Cavallo to help her. So Dr. Cavallo, she walked right over to the woman, who again is like really upset, and she tells her to calm down. She's gonna look her over. She's gonna figure out what's going on here. And so she throws on some rubber gloves, and very gently she begins to examine the burn. And immediately, Dr. Cavallo notices that this burn was like really strange. It was a perfect circle. Like the burn was really, really uniform. Okay. And it was about the size of a soccer ball, so it's quite big. And
that, my friend, is a football. I know he's American. I know you've got your flaws with your sports. And I know that you call a ball shaped like that a football. But a ball like that is not a soccer ball. It is a football. You need to get your house in order, because for it to be called football, or even American football, just because it's American, right? If the primary use is not with your feet, it shouldn't be called a football. We frown on the word soccer in this country.
Really, really uniform. And it was about the size of a soccer ball, so it's quite big. And it just kind of looked like a really bad sunburn. However, there were these two pretty clear puncture wounds, very small puncture wounds in the center of the burn.
Right.
Almost looked like a bite, like a spider bite, that then caused this like massive burn or something. But it was just odd. And so Dr. Cavallo really actually didn't know what she was looking at. And so she just asked the woman, "How'd you get this burn?" And the woman, who again is very upset, she's very frantic, she's clearly uncomfortable, she began to sort of stumble through this pretty outrageous story.
Okay.
She said she'd been in her backyard and she'd seen something flash overhead. And when she looked up, she said she had seen this large flying cylinder that looked like it could have been made of metal. And then this cylinder apparently like hit her with this beam of light that she described as feeling like it almost latched onto her, like the light had like latched onto her chest. And then she had the sensation of something puncturing her chest and then feeling like blood was being pulled out of her. And then just as quickly as it had started, the light disappeared, whatever had punctured her chest was gone, and the cylinder and the light, all of it just vanished. And she was left with this horrible mark on her chest. Now, Dr. Cavallo was very polite, and as the woman spoke, she nodded along appropriately, and
yeah, he's going like, hey, we've got another one for the nut bin.
Cavallo was very polite, and as the woman spoke, she nodded along appropriately and, seemed to be really invested in hearing the details of the story. But when the woman was done talking, Dr. Cavallo was thinking, like, that didn't happen. That's absolute nonsense. At this point, she assumed this woman must be having some kind of mental episode. But she didn't tell the woman this. Instead, she told the woman that she would just need to transfer her to a bigger hospital located about 3 hours away in the next big city. Realistically, because Dr. Cavallo knew that the bigger hospital would have the facilities and resources to care for this woman properly, not just her burn and puncture wounds, but also whatever was happening to her mentally. So Dr. Cavallo, she turned, left the room, and went to go make arrangements for this woman's transportation. And not long after that, the woman was on her way to the other hospital. And after that, Dr. Cavallo didn't really think about her again. However, the next day, when Dr. Cavallo was back at her hospital, she did find out that that woman who had gone to the other hospital, she had unfortunately succumbed to her injuries and had died. A few days later.
Jesus Christ. Oh my, mind you, why are we surprised? We're in a Mr. Ballen video.
Dr. Cavallo was back in her exam room, staring in shock at a new patient. It was a man, and he had the exact same burn pattern on his chest with the two puncture wounds in the middle as that woman from a few days ago, who had died 24 hours later. However, Dr. Cavallo is looking at this man's burn, and she thought, this one actually appears to be less severe than that woman's. So maybe this guy has a chance. It was the same location. It really did look the same, but it appeared to be a bit lighter, like it was not as severe.
And
also the man himself seemed very calm. Like, he was not hysterical the way the woman had been. He was just like, yeah, I have this burn. And so not only does Dr. Carvalho feel hopeful that she'll be able to actually treat his injury right here.
Without sounding funny, right? While he's talking about this now, it's got two little puncture wounds like a bite, and then it's like a burn. Are they sure they've not been bitten by a snake and it's some sort of reaction to the skin around it? Because that can happen, can't it? Because things can swell up and what have you, and it feels like a burning sensation. Not that I've ever been bit by a snake or anything, but I'm just saying, do you not reckon it could be something like that? Because they are in South America, in Brazil.
Not only does Dr. Carvalho feel hopeful that she'll be able to actually treat his injury right here in her hospital, but also she's like, he's so composed, the patient, he'll be able to tell me what really caused this mark on his chest.
Okay.
And probably whatever happened to him is what happened to this other woman. And it certainly was not some cylinder in the sky. There's got to be a real explanation here. So Dr. Carvalho put on her gloves and began applying some burn ointment to this man's chest. And as she did, she asked him, hey, what happened? How did you get this? And much to Dr. Carvalho's surprise, this man, just as calm as could be, told basically the exact same story as the woman. He talked about this big metallic flying cylinder that had latched itself onto his chest through a beam of light and sucked his blood.
Hey, Barbara, we've got a couple of Brazil nuts in here. They all want committing. I said that was my last dad joke before, but I couldn't resist that one. All right, let's go.
Latched itself onto his chest through a beam of light and sucked his blood. I mean, it was the same story. Now, Dr. Carvalho was used to patients periodically lying about how they got hurt.
Yeah, but two are the same.
But usually their lies were to make the story sort of more reasonable, not less so. So for Dr. Carvalho, I mean, what she's thinking is, I don't know what to believe, but clearly something really weird was going on here. But she had no idea what. And over the next few weeks, it only got stranger because more and more patients came into the hospital with these big circular burns. It got to the point where Dr. Carvalho, basically every single day, was treating a new patient who apparently had been attacked by some blood-sucking UFO.
This is crazy.
By November of that year, the entire region was completely freaked out. People were arming themselves with guns and fireworks and anything else they could use for protection against what everyone assumed was aliens from outer space coming to attack them.
Okay.
And while Dr. Carvalho understood why that was sort of the public's reaction, I mean, after all, there are people getting hurt, people dying from whatever this is. There's not a good explanation, so she got it. She understood the fear. But even though she's like on the ground seeing this every day, she's still thinking, like, there's gotta be a reasonable explanation for this. It's not blood-sucking aliens. Like, there's gotta be something that explains this. Then, one night in late November, Dr. Carvalho left the hospital and began heading home for the night.
Okay.
And as she was walking, she decided she would take the long way home. That way she could walk along the beach and clear her head. About 20 minutes later, she was strolling along the sand and looking out over the ocean, and even though it was dark, there were still people out enjoying the evening breeze, and the whole thing felt very peaceful and nice.
She's gonna get
Until suddenly, Dr. Carvalho heard an ear-piercing scream, and she saw this woman sprinting across the beach, waving her arms and pointing behind her, screaming that a UFO had arrived. And Dr. Carvalho, she turned her head to look where she was pointing, and she gasped, because right down the beach, hovering maybe 100 feet over the water, is like this tractor-sized metallic cylinder just hovering right there. I mean, it was clearly a UFO. It was the same thing that all these patients had been describing. There it was.
You never know, right, if governments back in the day were conducting experiments, shall we say. And maybe this was the technology of the very first drones before we've actually got drones that's accessible today. Do you know what I mean? And maybe they were doing things and experimenting on people with like
a UFO.
Probably to see how the public would react and stuff. But if that was the case, you have actually killed someone now.
Oh, it was the same thing that all these patients had been describing. There it was. Dr. Carvalho was not only shocked, but she was terrified. And everybody else on the beach, as they began to see this thing, they just started panicking. It was like complete pandemonium. People are screaming and running for cover, trying to get away as fast as possible. But Dr. Carvalho, despite instinctively wanting to run away with everybody else, she had this thought that, like, this is my moment. This is the time for me to go get a better look at this thing and figure out what in the world is going on. Figure out what this thing is that's clearly responsible for all these attacks.
What you're always told. Don't go towards the light. She's going to end up as another statistic in this Mr. Ballen video.
So Dr. Carvalho began running towards the UFO. Everybody else is streaming past her, going the other way. She's running towards it until she was basically standing right underneath it. And she stared up at this flying cylinder, 100 feet above her, and she felt this overwhelming sense of awe because this was unlike anything she had ever seen in her life. She knew that whatever this was, it definitely did not originate on Earth. And so Dr. Carvalho, for a few more moments, is just standing there staring at this thing until suddenly the UFO just flew off and disappeared.
Did not give it a burn.
The Brazilian military would come to Colares to investigate these UFO sightings. And they discovered that all told, more than 400 people were burned by what they described as these mysterious beams of light coming from these flying cylinders. And several of these people died. As for Dr. Carvalho, she was never attacked by, a beam of light from this cylinder. But after her encounter with it, she would go on to tell newspapers that she fully believed that what she had seen was a real UFO, not from Earth. The government investigation into these events came to be known as Operation Saucer. However, Operation Saucer never actually offered any explanation, really at all, for what the UFOs might have been. Today, the Brazilian government claims that they have fully declassified all the documents from Operation Saucer. But one military official who was involved in the operation claimed that some evidence was still kept secret from the public.
Well, that's the government for you though, isn't it? Some crazy stories there. I tell you what, right? It'd have been better if that UFO thing could have happened in this day and age, because there'd have been about 100,000 people with smartphones filming that now, and there'd be evidence everywhere, wouldn't there? I mean, crazy stories there, man. I think my favourite one was the guy in the water protecting the salmon. That guy was an absolute legend. And just think, if he hadn't have cast that one more lure in him, they may not have been caught unless he actually come out the water like a swamp thing to try and scupper their plans, shall we say. This was a very entertaining Mr. Ballen video today. But I mean, the hyena one is a wow story. Wow story. I mean, what sort of mindset do you have to say, oh, a hyena can heal you? Like a feral wild animal with a very strong bite. And that last one, some believe, some don't. That's why we have the X-Files. Anyway, what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to check out the original video. Give Mr. Ballen a like and a subscribe and stuff. If you want to follow me too, I would absolutely appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.